everybody. So I'm so excited you're here today to watch today's video. This one is going to be a little different because this one is a little bit more just a synopsis of a technique. I wanted to go over not only underpainting, but also a unique way to underpaint, which is with acrylic ink. Now, if you have watched any of my YouTube videos, you know that I really like to use acrylic ink, especially the Daler-Rowney acrylic inks. This one is a burnt umber, and then I have an indigo, and I also have, this one is called Purple Lake. They also make some in sepia, antelope brown, and I love those ochre colors and the indigo. There's also some brands by Liquitex, and you can even see just in this video that they're a little bit more brightly saturated, and I don't use these quite as much. But these, it depends on the craft store. I go to either Michael's or Hobby Lobby, and I think Hobby Lobby is the one that has the Liquitex, or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. Michael's might have this one. So check your local craft store, because depending on where you are, it's what kind they carry. I mean, you don't need very much. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how much I use. And I will show you the end piece, but some part of the middle is missing just because I was really wanting to just focus on the technique of applying this, the acrylic ink. And so this is the piece we're going to be working on today. And we're going to work on an older painting in the beginning that I just wasn't ever really pleased with, but I had kept because I like to keep my paper. And I will wash it in with some alcohol, just the old pastel. This is UArt, and so it applies so well. And then I start applying the acrylic ink. Now you're gonna get a little secret whenever you see me apply this, something that I don't share very often, so it's just for you guys. It's a fun way to apply. And then after a while, I'll finish up the painting. So I hope you enjoy, and please ask any questions that you have, and thank you so much for watching. Okay, here is that Daler-Rowney acrylic ink that I was talking about. And then here is the painting that we're going to be painting over. This was a scene, just kind of a muddy, messy, there's just not really a strong focal point. And so I've kept the paper just because I don't like throwing it away. And I am applying a liberal amount of rubbing alcohol on the surface just to kind of swirl this pastel away. If you don't like the thickness of the pastel on your if you have a failed piece that you want to try to save the paper, then go ahead and brush off as much pastel as you can, and then you can apply the alcohol. I didn't brush off the pastel, and so I'm just kind of almost painting with this pigment that's on the paper, just mixing these colors together. Of course, they're making kind of a gray, but just kind of a slurry that I'm going to use as the base for my painting. I am thinking that I want to make some kind of moody nocturne piece, and so this toning of this paper is going to help me achieve that. In some ways, sometimes whenever I have a piece like this, it's just an accidental happy painting that really, I wouldn't have painted this had I not had a failed piece. So these, I always like to save the paper because you never know what inspiration is going to strike and that you're going to create. Okay, before I start applying the acrylic ink, I'm going to mark my painting with the reference photo, and you see it pop up right there. This is the one that I'm using for this painting. This is a scene from Walden Pond, which is one of my very favorite places in the whole world. I used to, early in my marriage, I lived in Massachusetts, in Brookline, Massachusetts, and of course, Walden Pond is near Concord, and it's such a lovely, peaceful, amazing place to visit, and this scene was from a trip there. I am loosely following the outline of the landforms, which is, that hill there and the distant tree line, and then the tree shapes up on the hill, just with some graphite. And then what I'm going to do after this is I'm going to start applying the acrylic ink, and you're going to see how I apply that here in just a second. Okay, I'm going to make sure to bring my shape down into the water. That's just solidifying it in my brain that yes, I want there to be shadows in the water that are below the trees, just like in the reference photo. And even if I cover this up with pastel or with the acrylic ink, then I at least mapped it out in my brain. Now there is the secret that I wanted to show you. So this is the ink that I'm going to be using. This is, I believe, the sepia. And I am going to be applying it with a piece of cloth. This is something that I kind of discovered just because I had a piece of actually burlap on my desk. And sometimes I still will use burlap, but only for studies. And the reason for that is because the burlap pieces can stick into the acrylic. So there you see, I'm using a pie plate, just very few drops, and then also a spray water bottle, and just spraying into that acrylic ink, taking my piece of cotton cloth, and then folding it and getting a little bit, and you can kind of see that that acrylic ink on the cloth. So you can see how the cloth picks up that ink, and those little threads that are sticking out really create the brush, the sticks, twigs, the branches, all of that kind of stuff, kind of organically, where we don't really have to internalize, okay, oh my gosh, I'm making a bush right now, or I'm making a tree, I'm making little sticks. It kind of creates them for you, which just makes your paintings look a little bit more organic. You can use the folded edge if you want to create more of a wash, like a solid effect, or you can use the more raw threaded edge if you're wanting little bits and pieces to create those brush effects. Then you can also pull it across the bases of the trees down towards the water, which is going to create automatic shadows. Then you can lightly just tap, tap, tap there in the distance on those distant trees. And then I think I reloaded here. I ran out of ink, and so you don't want to put too much water in it because water does affect unmounted UArt. So if you thin it a little too much, then it's putting too much water onto the paper surface and it will buckle. So I try to only do a couple of squirts of water to just gently thin this acrylic ink. And then what I'm going to do is, if you really want to create some texture, it's also fun to take that water bottle that I used, and I kind of like to point, you'll see in a second, I like to point it up, kind of underneath the painting. So you'll see how it's kind of underneath, spraying up a little bit into that acrylic ink, which almost creates this mottled effect that is so fun. Okay, so that is the main part of the video where I wanted just to really show you the technique of applying the acrylic ink. Now I have this little cup that I keep near my easel, and it is filled with just little scraps of fabric. I have regular fabric, I have a few pieces of burlap. Now what I was saying about the burlap that is really important is that if you fold this and use it in that acrylic ink, which here, grab it real quick. So here's my tray. If you apply this in here, there are minute threads in the burlap that are going to stick into the acrylic ink surface. Sometimes those can create some interesting effects, but the thing that is important is that burlap usually is not acid free. And so over time, if this was a piece that you were going to sell or display or exhibit, those could really mess up your piece. So I don't use burlap for any kind of paintings other than just the pure fun of study, just because of that. Now the cotton fabric is going to be better. You can also use cotton canvas, rip a piece off of an old painting that you've done, you know, those little threads, use some gesso. You can make your own paintbrushes. I've also used natural sponges with the acrylic ink. You can also use the pipe foam. That's another technique. Whatever texture you want to create, figure something out that makes that texture, and that's half of the fun of using these awesome inks. I do like the like I said, the more ochre colors. The darker Payne's Gray is a really good one, except it's really dark, so you have to apply a lot of water to that one. There's some golden, the Liquitex especially has a really beautiful orange, and I'm not sure what it's called. And the other thing to remember about these is make sure you always twist on your top. I have so many times, you know, I've taken it out, a little dropper, and then I just set it back in without closing it, and then it spills, and then I've wasted all of that ink, money, and you know, made a huge mess, and it will stain your fingers. So if you're sensitive about that, then make sure you wear gloves. Anyway, I will go back right here to the painting. Like I said, I didn't record this whole piece because I really just wanted to focus on the underpainting. But then next week I'm going to have a full video for you, just another beautiful landscape. And this week I am going to New York, so I couldn't do a full video for you this week. But I know, and thank you so much for understanding about that. I'm taking my son to the Big Apple. We're going to have so much fun. So I'll tell you about how that goes after this week. But thank you so much for watching, and just keep watching the video. Bye. Okay, so I am going to add just a few little voiceover, even though I didn't intend to record this whole thing. Some of it's missing, but I think you'll get the gist. You guys are so smart and artistic. So this is a dark, muted, grayed turquoise. And my main thinking during this whole process of after the acrylic ink underpainting was restraint, because I really loved the underpainting that I accidentally made with the slurry of the old painting. You know, and that's, like I said, it's something that I wouldn't have paper like this. I wouldn't have had this tone if I hadn't messed up. So, you know, sometimes things are meant to be, and I ended up really loving this piece. But I'm really just right now just cutting in with using this dark gray, that's a Terry Ludwig, and making the hillside of the reference photo just peek in and out, poke its head out in and out of the dark shadows and the tree bases that I made. You don't have to draw so much of the hillside as much as make tiny marks to indicate, you know, where that tree line is and where that hill is. Coincidentally, one of the pieces that was on the wall near this painting was another favorite painting of mine. It's almost the same orientation. And it was a painting that I made also for Massachusetts several years ago that was created solely with the Terry Ludwig Umbers collection. And I've always loved that painting. And so during the process of this painting, I looked at that painting on my wall and thought, oh my gosh, I want to create a piece like that. I want to use those umbers again. And so that's what I really mainly pulled from is the Umbers collection. You can see, obviously, this is the part where I hadn't recorded, but what I did was I used a slightly lighter version for the snow, and then I used greens in my sky, a cool green and a warmer green in the base. And you know, green isn't something we think about using for a sky, but it really I thought, I wanted to create this, what I said, like kind of a nocturne scene, and greens are beautiful for that, and working in a little bit of turquoise to emulate the snow on the ground. And that way, you know, this reference photo is a really bright blue day, but you know, I love, one of my favorite things to do is take a reference and change it. And you know, you can make any time of day with any reference that you have. All we are doing is putting the shape of the land, the shape of the trees, the the shapes in the water, the shapes of a path, the shapes of a canyon wall. And then after that, once we have that base down, it is up to us and we can change anything about it. And, I know that, whenever I talk about this, sometimes it's a hard concept to grasp, especially if you're new to painting, because you don't know the colors to choose. People say, but how did you know to use that color? How did you know to use the green? How did you know to pull that brown down into the water? And that is just through observation. Go, if you want to paint a nocturne, get on the internet and look up nocturne and see what colors people are using. What did the masters use? How did they convey evening? How did they convey twilight? It's not copying a piece to look at somebody's palette. You can go and look at somebody's palette and say, I want to use those colors. Use those colors, use them in your own reference. That is a great way to learn color theory. It's a great way to learn different colors than what you might normally choose. And it's not cheating. So many times I think we are too afraid to just really study. And think about, over the course of art history, how many artists copied other artists. And we're not talking about copying exactly stroke for stroke on the same type of composition, the same photograph, the same painting. We're talking about looking at the colors that somebody is using and applying them to ourselves so we can teach ourselves. And remember that these Patreon lessons are for you guys in your home study. These aren't going to be, your work. Don't submit it to a gallery. Don't submit it to a show. Don't, if you post it online, make sure you put, the reference that you're using it from this Patreon page, so that way you don't get in trouble and somebody doesn't think that you're copying, or somebody doesn't think that you've taken a copyright that belongs to me and applied it to yourself. And that's for you guys, because I don't want anybody to think that you aren't being honest with where you're getting your inspiration. In the same token, whenever I paint these pieces, I want you to paint them. I want you to post them. I want you to learn from them. And the only way to learn from them is for you to practice with them. So I want you to take these palettes and apply it to your own references. If you have a beautiful scene with some, trees overhanging some water, some snow, or maybe you don't even have snow. Maybe it's the middle of spring, but you can make snow. Just paint snow. Just take out those yellow grasses and add turquoise. You can make, like I said, you can make anything you want out of your references. Free yourself from being married to your references, and then your whole world is going to open up, and you're going to see all of the possibilities that you have within your own reference photos. So this piece, it was a happy accident. If I hadn't saved this piece of paper, if I hadn't, put it aside for me to wash out that old pastel, I wouldn't have probably created it. It wouldn't have had the same mood, because it wouldn't have been a toned piece. This piece is a little darker and moodier because of that first initial slurry of pastel. That decision informed everything else about this painting. And that's how, in the very beginning stages, they are so important for us whenever we are setting out to paint. I did look, and I will post the painting that was my inspiration piece for on the Patreon page, so make sure you check that out. And also, of course, this reference. And if you want to paint this reference as it is, with a bright bluebird day, as we say here in Texas, then go ahead. You are free to use it, and it is in the attachments on this Patreon post. So, I'm just continuing to add, and at this point, what I would say about pieces like this is sometimes it's more important what you leave out than what you put in, and restraint is key, especially on a moodier piece like this. I'm taking a lot of time to step back and look at this piece because I just wanted to preserve that the moody effects of that layer of that slushy pastel at the very beginning. To me, this piece speaks of twilight, evening time, adding a little bit of color back there in the distant tree line just to bring a little bit of more interest into that that section right above where the spit of land comes down. That to me is kind of the center of interest, just right there in that section. And also bringing some of that green back down into the water. And I know this time I have talked a lot about things that aren't necessarily, I picked up this pastel and I put it right here, and then I put this pastel right here. But that's just because I wanted to just give a little talk about taking references and making them your own, and then also how to apply that to your own study other than here. You know, you can take these references and use these palettes on your own artwork, and make sure that you you know, just have fun with your work and experiment and play and you know, like I said with the acrylic ink at the very beginning, you know, take some bubble wrap and see what kind of texture that makes. I mean, look around, you know, at your studio and have fun with your art. You know, that's why we're artists. We're all children at heart, and we love to play. I'm being very gentle right now with the pastel application, going back and forth and back and forth on these little reflections in the water, and kind of glazing with that. That's actually the same pastel that I used for the snow, and so using those same colors throughout the painting is just going to bring a cohesion to your piece for color temperature reasons, you know, just color theory, and placing them around the painting so it will make sense. You know, I like to use right there, I'm using, that's a Viva paper towel. You can tap it on the surface, and you know, remove some and leave some others, which kind of like in the still life last week I told you, kind of creates this wrinkly effect in the pastel that I love. That, you know, the more texture we can create, the better, since we can't create impasto or brush strokes like all you lucky oil painters out there. Adding just a little bit of touches of light, maybe that's moonlight hitting those trees. They're very way back in the distance on this beautiful evening at Walden Pond, even though it was actually daytime at Walden Pond. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this piece come together and seeing the acrylic ink secrets that I have. And thank you so much for continuing to be here on Patreon. You have no idea how much it means to me. I love interacting with all of you and seeing the work that you're putting out, which is amazing, and just your generous, wonderful spirits. I'm going to tell you all about New York when I get back next week, and I hope you guys enjoy the Wednesday post and the Friday post. I'll still have those up, so look for them, and thank you so much.